Welcome to America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp. Matt's on the road, as you all know. He had just wrapped up his time in Nevada with Adam Laxalt, and we're heading, both of us, to New Hampshire. So lots of activity happening on the CPAC front and really counting down till midterm election day. But I want to also hone in on something that's happening at the international level. So we know that these freedom-loving citizens, they've been sending shockwaves all around the globe as they have been electing strong leaders. First, we saw it in Sweden, then Italy, and now Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has made a comeback as Israel's prime minister after a projected win in a crucial election yesterday. Here to discuss the political climate of what's happening in Israel and what comes next is CPAC Senior Fellow for Israel and Jewish Affairs, Yitz Tendler. Help us break this down. So we know that Netanyahu, obviously, I don't want to say he's been on the outs, but, you know, he was kind of on standby here. And between what we've seen with former Prime Minister Bennett, obviously the current Prime Minister today, what is causing this shift where Netanyahu has been able to make his comeback?
Sure. So it's hard to overstate how significant the results of the initial results, at least, of the elections are. For the past 5 years, for the past 4 years, Israel has gone to elections 5 times. And there's been basically electoral gridlock there. And even when Netanyahu was able to form a coalition and govern, it was very challenging for him to actually implement the strong law and order policies that his own party wanted because of the way coalition politics plays out in the Israel system. And now, finally, for the first time, Netanyahu is actually able to form a stable coalition of 4 parties that are completely aligned with him on almost every issue. We're hopefully looking at, from his perspective at least, a 4-year term for this particular coalition that he will be at the head of. And Netanyahu, this is the absolute best case scenario for him. He has a comfortable majority. His own party is the largest,
right?
Of course, of the parties, but along with their allies, they are comfortably going to be able to implement some of very important policies.
So let me ask you this, because the way, of course, the media is describing this is that the voters, that basically moving forward with this election, they're viewing it as the country's most right-wing and religious coalition in its history. So as you can imagine, I'm sure the liberal media is going ballistic whenever they hear the term right-wing and religious coalition being formed here. What does that mean exactly? What are the policies that we're going to see Netanyahu embrace?
Sure. Well, there's actually already speculation about the Biden administration boycotting some members of this coalition, which is interesting to see how that's going to play out. But, you know, Israel is America's strongest ally in the Middle East, and a strong Israel and an Israel that projects strength is definitely going to result in America being much stronger as a result. And of course, we're all used to the talking heads on the left saying that this is Israel's most right-wing, most extreme. But the truth is, if you look at the democratic process, and Israel is a free democracy, you could see who the voters chose.
Right.
And voters want to be safe. Over the past year has been the most deadly year in Israel since 2015. People want to feel safe on the streets. So yes, they voted for Likud, led by Netanyahu. But actually, a more important story is that the second largest party in this coalition that Netanyahu is going to be forming is a party that literally doubled in size. And this is what the world would call the hard right. So on the one hand, you have the hard right doubling in size, what they call the hard right. These are folks who are focused on law and order. They're focused on projecting strength. And on the other hand, actually, probably the most interesting story of this election is that the party on the hard left, the party most associated with woke types of policies related to family and related to security policy, is actually falling below the electoral threshold, and they will not even show up in the Knesset. So this is a strong message by Israel's voters. This is a democracy. You have to respect the will of the democracy. People want to feel safe in the streets. That's the message that they're sending.
Let's talk about that a little more. We've seen this Palestinian unrest in the West Bank. We've seen a couple more of these terrorist attacks just happening recently. You know, so I think that it all plays, definitely you're in talking about the safety component. How do you think Netanyahu will handle the Palestinian Authority? Obviously, there's threats coming from all sides. We know that the threat from Iran is real. So what do you think his plan will be to deal with these foreign threats?
Sure. So first of all, domestically in Israel, with the Palestinian terrorists who are coming into Israeli cities and committing both shooting and stabbing attacks pretty regularly. So this new junior partner of Netanyahu, this particular party has been pushing for something that in America wouldn't be that controversial: death penalties for convicted terrorists, for convicted terrorist murderers. In Israel, that's considered controversial. In the United
Wow.
States, that wouldn't be so controversial. So when you hear people talking about the hard right, that these folks are racist, that they're fascists, they are asking for terrorists to be handled in a manner that here in the United States we would consider standard. Right now in Israel, terrorists, we're talking about terrorists who are convicted of murder of civilians, are held in conditions that many Israelis feel are way too comfortable. They're able to pursue their higher education, get academic degrees, and they're not being treated the way they should be. And unfortunately, that actually, in many ways, encourages terrorism. So they want a strong iron fist against terror.
Do you think that the Palestinian Authority, what do you think their reaction will be towards Netanyahu taking on this big role again and really making sure that Israel is safe?
So frankly, I think they might be kicking themselves for not having taken, if you recall, President Trump in January of 2020, he actually rolled out his vision for a peace arrangement agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis, his team. And it was kind of laughed at and then overlooked. And then COVID came and we got derailed. The Palestinians at that time, they completely rejected it. They said, this is crazy. We're not looking at it. Right now, the Palestinians are facing a Israeli coalition that may not even be willing to come to the table.
Wow.
And so they had an opportunity that they again missed. If they want to sue for peace on the terms of this particular leadership group in Israel, they are not going to get everything they want. So they are probably very, very frightened right now. And I think they hopefully will start pursuing paths of peace and tolerance to get their needs met.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Obviously, we've got our big midterm elections coming up next week. We've seen in the recent poll numbers that suburban women, they're shifting towards Republicans. You're seeing independents going also tracking Republican as well, or supporting Republican candidates. Hispanic voters leaving the Democrat Party. I mean, this is a obviously multiple impacts on the Democrat Party because, in my opinion, their big focus has only been on abortion. It's only been, they don't even want to tackle this issue of the economy. Where do you think the Jewish community, how do you think they'll vote? I also specifically I want to look at New York because obviously there's a big Orthodox Jewish community there. Lee Zeldin is neck and neck with Governor Hochul. Give me a sense of what you're learning on the ground.
Sure. So the Lee Zeldin story is absolutely fascinating. I mean, you and I both, we know Lee from numerous impacts, and he has come over the years. And when he ran for governor, I'll be honest, I kind of smiled like, come on, what are Lee's chances? And right now he is leading in many polls. And what he succeeded in tapping into, especially in New York City, where you have a very sizable Orthodox Jewish community that attend faith-based private schools. And that's something faith communities around the United States are familiar with, but this is something that is a top priority for them. And in New York City, there are forces from the current administration in New York that are trying to dilute the way these religious faith schools operate, and that has resulted in a backlash against the current administration in Albany. And the Orthodox Jewish community, their numbers is of a sizable enough number that they are going to actually tip the balance. And across the board, it is almost unanimous that they are now coming out in support of Zeldin, which is something that has never been seen. It is truly historic.
Well, what do you think is driving them towards supporting Zeldin over Hochul?
So, number one issue, I would say, is probably school choice issues and the ability to practice their faith without government intervention. Yeah. Number two issue is safety, law and order, anti-Semitism. This is being overlooked by the media, but identifiably, Orthodox Jews have been attacked on an almost weekly basis in New York City over the past bunch of years. And there's a sense that the current leadership of New York City and New York State have not been doing enough. And it is inconvenient for them that this is happening in these particular neighborhoods, and they're choosing to overlook it. So they want Lee Zeldin's law and order policies to be implemented.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think Governor Hochul's really having a hard time selling her message on crime and what she's been able to do when you have such weak bail reform policies in place and obviously very liberal prosecutors. That definitely doesn't help. Thank you, Yitz, so much for joining me, and
an honor.
And thanks for all the information. And I'm sure we're going to learn more by next week and what's happening in Israel. So we'll definitely bring you back to give us an update.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And now take a listen to a speech that Matt and I gave out in Oakland County in the great state of Michigan, where we were campaigning for the gubernatorial candidate, Tudor Dixon. Take a listen.
And it is my honor to introduce Matt and Mercedes Schlapp.
Wow, okay. Are you all ready? Are we going to win in Michigan? Are we going to win big? We have got to get this done. We are so pumped up. I got to tell you, Matt was on the radio the other day, and he literally said, Tudor Dixon will win Michigan. She will be the next governor of this great state, along with the great patriot Shane Hernandez. And let me tell you something. This is a critical race. This is like ground zero here in Michigan. Everybody's watching. What's going to happen? Can we send Gretchen Whitmer back to her lake house or somewhere in Florida and just retire her along with these other radical Democrats who have spent their time trying to shut down our communities, take over our parenting skills, which we have said no more. Hi, honey.
How are you, sweetheart?
Sorry, I was a little pumped up.
I have a question for you. Are you ready for the great American unwokening? What do you think? Have you had enough of woke? I like your hat, sir. I think it says it all. Your governor, who I'm going to soon call former governor, she was the poster child of everything I hate. She was the poster child of lockdowns. She was the poster child of face diapers. She was the poster child of every radical policy that Joe Biden spouted or was actually handed to him. You know, Joe Biden's interesting. I often say we have a president who can't read cue cards, and we have a vice president who has no clue cards, right? And Gretchen Whitmer became the face of everything. She got put out there to respond to the State of the Union. She got put out there to defend 9 months of abortion. I even heard her talking about the need for her kids to have, her daughters to have this right. I thought, how grisly has it gotten? How grisly has it gotten? If we have 5 daughters, the last thing in the world I'd want to do is to skip that wonderful moment, hopefully we'll have one day, where you hold a grandchild in your arms and you think about the next generation in this country. You know, this flag is a beautiful, beautiful thing. People died for that flag. We love this country. We're tired of the war in America. Why don't we send a message to everyone we love our country? We're going to take it back.
And you always have to remember that Gretchen Whitmer, she was one of the vice presidential possibilities for Joe Biden. Quite frankly, I don't know who would be worse, Kamala Harris or Gretchen Whitmer. I think they're tied. Okay? Kamala Harris as a border czar, and then we've got Gretchen Whitmer as a lockdown czar. She cares more about what Dr. Fauci thinks than what parents think. She cares more about what teachers' unions want to teach push in these schools and teach our kids critical race theory, gender ideology at the age of 5. And the parents, thank God for you, for rising up in this critical moment in our country to make sure that we take back our schools, take back our education system, and make sure that these Democrats don't indoctrinate our children. We love America. We love our freedoms, and we're not going to let the Democrats dictate their radical agenda and try to influence our young minds. And it's going to take each and every one of you This is it. This is the moment. Matt feels it. And let me tell you, he's a realist. He's not the optimist at all sometimes. And he says, it's not going to be a red wave. It's going to be a red tsunami that's going to happen here across the country.
Now that's our message. This is our message to you. We get sometimes a little bit of a benefit in this cause that we're involved with. We have talked to so many great people as we travel the country. Too many of them whisper. Too many of them in hushed tones saying they love Donald Trump. Too many in hushed tones saying, I want to take back my country. Too many in hushed tones saying, why are they teaching my grandson he's a girl? We're too silent, and we've been too cautious for too long. I think we've realized that was a huge mistake. I will admit it. In my case, it was a huge mistake. I was polite. I want to get along. I want to be respectful. I want them to think that I'm thoughtful. But in that process, they kind of stole everything behind us, right? Elections, corporate boardrooms, education systems, classrooms. They're liars, lie about everything. A lot of violence, and I think we've all woken up to the fact that it's time to take it back, right? So our message from around the country, and we're heading from here to Arizona to go help Kerry Lake, Blake Masters, then up to Nevada to go help Adam Laxalt, who's going to win and pick up a Republican seat in Nevada. Then you're off to Pennsylvania for Mastriano, and then back up to New Hampshire, which is tied for the Senate race. So what's our message to you? It's exactly what Mercy just said. Don't believe the news. Pray for your country. Turn off the television. Take all the jobs possible in these count rooms. Watch everything they do. Take your phone with you. Don't get pushback. Having transparency in elections, what it's all about. Get inside there and make sure the whole world can see what's going on. If we lose fair and square, fine. We can't afford to have them continue to decide what laws they'll follow and not follow when it comes to elections. We're going to win. We're going to win big. And this is the message. And that's a great shirt, but I can't talk more about it. The message is we're going to win all over this country because of people like you. People still love this country. We're going to save this country, and we're going to give our kids a future that they deserve. So thank you all very much.
And don't let them call you semi-fascist, extremists, far-right, radicals. Don't let them call you fascist. We are Americans. We love this country. Push back. Don't let them call you names, because when they're calling you names, they are losing. And now I have the great honor of introducing someone who is truly amazing, someone who I've got to spend time with. We endorse Tudor Dixon early on. She is so authentic. She's full of heart and a brilliant woman who is sacrificing so much to take on this challenge and this leadership role.